Happy Wednesday. It's the Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. It's great to be with you. I'm Rhett Power, your host. The point of the show is to bring today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world, and who we can learn from. The whole point is to have them on the program, ask questions, and get better at what we do. Now, we broadcast on not only LinkedIn, but Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and probably some others that I'm forgetting. And so one of the fun things is that you can actually ask your questions of the guest, and so go on those platforms. We monitor those throughout the program, and if you have a good question, we'll put it to our guest for an answer. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share so that we can benefit, so that your network can benefit from these conversations, and we can grow our audience. That's two good benefits of you liking and sharing and engaging. Now, today it's a real pleasure. I've got Diane DiResta. She's the founder of DiResta Communications. She's a speaker, author, media trainer, speech coach, and she's a certified speech pathologist. She's based in New York. She's the author of Give Fear the Finger, How to Knock Out Fear of Public Speaking, and Knockout Presentations, How to Deliver Your Message with Power, punch, and pizzazz. Diane, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here, Rhett.
Likewise, it's great to have you on the program. We are in some interesting times, aren't we?
We certainly are. The world has changed. It's so interesting because I've been in the business a long time, and I've been through every layoff, corporate freeze, 9/11, Sandy, economic crisis, but this is now the next level because this pandemic is worldwide. So we are all learning how to navigate now and pivot.
Yeah. How's the pandemic changed your business, you think?
Well, it's a lot more challenging, hard because you're limited in the way you can maneuver. Fortunately, this happened when we were set up technologically. So thank God for Zoom and Social Live and all of these platforms, because I don't know where we would be if it hadn't been for the technology. So it's different. People are reticent. They don't want to move forward. Sometimes they're testing the waters. There are many cancellations. So if you're a speaker, conferences have been canceled. So that's had a big impact on people's businesses. So what we're learning to do right now, Rhett, is to show up differently, even though we still have the same content and the same message. So it's been a learning curve for many people.
What do you think that means, to show up differently? I mean, I think that's a fascinating question, right? Because that's true. I mean, we're asked to all of a sudden give a presentation in front of a camera, right, as opposed to a live audience. And I know for me, the live audience, I kind of feed off of that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you sort of feed off that energy, and it's a boost that you get from being on stage. I find a lot of that to be a lot harder on camera.
It is. It's a different skill, and that's why people will bring me in, or people like me, because people who are used to the main stage have to change the way that they communicate. So let me just say, first of all, that speaking, presentation is a leadership skill. It doesn't matter what the medium is, it is a leadership skill. So when I knock out presentations, and by the way, this is what it looks like.
I love props. Good shot.
With my
you got to let people read it. Listen one more time.
Okay. Knockout presentations.
Excellent. Right. And you can get that on Amazon. Yep.
On Amazon or in bookstores as well. I wrote it quite a while ago. It's now in its third edition. And the reason it continues to sell is because it's the fundamentals, but it's like a seminar in a book. I wrote it so that if you can't afford to hire me, this is the next best thing. You have me with you. But there are some differences today. So one of the things that's interesting is, how do you go from the main stage to the screen? How do you translate stage presence into screen presence? Because they're a little bit different. So one of the things a leader or a speaker needs to know is, first of all, where do I look? Now, this becomes an issue no matter what, because when I'm talking to people who are in front of a group, they're looking over people's heads, they're looking at one side of the room. And I always tell them, find key people and look at each person for a little bit of time so that you have this balance. Now, as you see, when I do this on screen, it does not look good. So what you need to do is look at the lens. Seriously, look at the lens. Now, I'm not happy about this because I'm looking at a lens and I don't see you, Rhett, but I know that you're perceiving me as if I am. So that's the
Right.
thing. And it's a hard skill and it's a lonely feeling. But here's where your imagination comes in. I often tell people you can take a picture of somebody or use it, post it, and paste it where the lens is. So most computers have the lens at the top. So put your post-it at the top, and that creates that idea of, oh, let me look here all the time. So that's the first thing. Or what you can do, let's say you're doing a webinar, and so there is no video. You're not seeing the audience. You can take a picture or a screenshot of an audience and place it where the lens is. And that creates more of a warming feeling so that you're not
I
so.
love that.
Yeah, it's hard. These are the little tricks that you use. But it's like when you have a satellite interview and you're talking directly to the lens and you don't see anybody. It takes practice. So here's where your imagination becomes important. Imagine somebody in front of you. Actually create an avatar if you don't have that picture or that screenshot. Imagine. So I'm imagining you now because I've seen you and I'm seeing you in this lens as if it's my crystal ball. And so that's the first step. You've got to have a focal point for your eye contact, because otherwise, especially in an interview, if somebody's interviewing you and you're looking here and here and here, it makes you look unfocused. So that's the first step.
Yeah, that's
Some
true.
other things to keep in mind too. For example, the panel, the famous panel. Now here's where it's a little challenging. When we go to conferences and we see a panel of experts, they usually are, to a degree, talking heads. You have someone introduce the people, and then they're talking about their expertise, and then at the end, there's a Q&A. Sometimes the moderator asks questions in between, but you're pretty much giving a type of presentation. That does not work well in the virtual world. Why? Because the attention span is so short that if you're not changing things rapidly, here's what happens. Let's imagine you have a slide up there. Let's say you're at a webinar and you're talking for a minute on that slide. Well, I can listen and I'm going to be looking at my phone. I'm hearing everything you say. I don't need to listen. You're droning. Nothing has changed visually. So the first thing to keep in mind is you need to change it up. So when you're on a panel, you want to have a lot of engagement and interaction. I recently did a panel on authorship. A friend of mine came along and said, let's do this panel. It was called Become an Author, The Time Is Now. We had 3 panelists, and I was the producer, the moderator, and a third panelist, which I don't recommend because it takes a lot of coordination. But in every panel, you want to have a moderator, a producer, and the panelist. Now, here's the job of the producer. The producer is like the behind the scenes director. They're making sure everything's working. They're checking the comments in the chat box. They're watching the timing. They're looking at the icons. They're making sure everything works. If someone has trouble with sound, they're making sure the mics are muted. The moderator or MC is the one who is kicking it off. When you talk about energy, you have to push your energy higher. You have to create more energy, and that's what the moderator does. And that moderator keeps things going. And then with the panelists, they need to give shorter presentations. So for example, here's something I did as the moderator. When the acquisition editor was talking about the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing, I then said, the question on everyone's mind is, which way do I go? So which way are you leaning right now? If you're leaning toward traditional, would you write the letter T in the chat? And if you want self-publishing, write the letter S. So that was simple because instead of having people write full words, have them take an initial. That speeds things up. And then it's interesting, what creates the energy is you're looking, oh, I see all these T's. Wait a minute, no, I think there are more S's. Oh, I see a question mark, somebody's undecided. So the more that you can engage the audience, the more effective you will be in the virtual world. Now,
So the chat, because I think I was talking to somebody the other day and they found that distracting, but I actually see your point. You're actually getting them to engage in what the speaker's talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's no way for that speaker to really ask a question and kind of gauge from the audience. It's hard you can raise your hand and all that other stuff, but I like this idea of just pose a letter, right? Yes or no.
Yes.
And get people to engage a little bit.
Right. Make it simple. Now, here's the other thing that's key. When, let's say, someone's giving a training workshop, of course, we position it and we do some housekeeping items, but this is more critical in the virtual world, because what you need to start with is, let's orient. All right, take a look at the bottom left hand. You'll see the mic and you'll see the video. Unmute your mic. And here's the chat. And here's what we want you to do at this point. So orient people. And I even did a test. I said, all right, let's just make sure the chat's working. Type your first name. And everybody did. So again, right from the start, you're getting engagement. I saw one seminar, and I think it was a coaching seminar. Every time I wanted to go to my phone, they were engaging us with a question or a poll, and they did it so well. So that's what you want to do, because guaranteed your audience is going to check out. It's a little harder when you're live in front of a speaker, but in the virtual world, they're multitasking.
Is there I was on another call the other day, and probably half the group was off the video, and they turned the video off. Is there any recommendation on, is it good to push people to be on the video, or is it okay if they're not? It seems very pushy to sort of make people turn their cameras on, but at the same time, you also don't want them multitasking while you're doing it, right?
All right, so here's the thing. As the moderator or the producer of the event, so you get to decide what you want to do. So this is part of your housekeeping up front, saying, all right, we'd appreciate it if everybody would turn on their videos so that we can see who you are and participate. And sometimes I have a friend who jokes and says, I want to see your beautiful faces. But when people need to disengage, let's say they're taking a bio break or they got a phone call, it's a good idea to take off the video so that you're not distracted with all of the movement behind. So that's another thing that you can tell people. Now, during the panel, I asked people to shut off the video. Why? Because we had almost 50 people and we had 3 panelists. And I explained that we don't want there to be confusion with you trying to look at where the speaker is. Let's all shut off the videos and you'll see only the panelists. And everybody was very cooperative and it worked very well. So again, there's a lot of strategy before you ever implement. Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating. I hadn't done that. And I run a couple panel discussions a week, but I really love that idea of, during the panel, let's cut off our video so that you can see who's talking and the focus can be on that. And you're not, I do the same. I find myself doing the same thing. Where's that person speaking?
Exactly.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Now there's also, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say also, at least on the Zoom platform, when somebody's speaking, the box lights up so you can see that that's the person. But when you have so many faces and you're in gallery view, you might have to fast forward and click the arrow, and it is confusing. Now you can also pin a video. So let's say you're the main speaker, you can pin it so that whenever you speak, you're in full speaker view. But for the most part, I think it's easier to ask people to shut off their videos.
Yeah, that makes a lot. I like that. I'll try that today. I have one coming up.
Yeah, let me know how it goes.
Hopefully I don't hang up on everybody, right? Pressing buttons. Try to minimize that when I'm doing a big call like that. You talked a little bit about the, sort of a different skill set to present online, but what are the keys? Because I know the book focuses on really the fundamentals, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about the fundamentals because I think you got to have the fundamentals first before you can do an effective presentation, because there are some skills that are the same, right?
Absolutely.
So what are some of the fundamentals to it, like a knockout presentation?
All right. So the fundamentals, first of all, I always call it the YAM formula. How is public speaking like a YAM? Know yourself, know your audience, and know your message, YAM. That never changes regardless of the medium. So the first thing you want to know is, who am I as a package of skills? What is my style? What's my personal brand? And how do I want to convey that? And so that shows up in the backdrop that you choose, in the clothing that you're wearing. Are you consistent with your brand? The second thing, who is the audience? And the way you present is going to be different depending on who's in front of you. And so what did you do your upfront study or homework? And do you know enough about them to make sure that you're communicating in a way that they can receive it? And then the third part is know your message. And here's where messaging is key, because in terms of fundamentals, I want to talk about the CEO from Marriott, Arne Sorensen. He had bad news about COVID, and there was a video about him. And I did a blog post because I thought he did an excellent job. Now, part of the messaging is to realize that language counts. Language is very important, rather, whether it's virtual or old-fashioned. And he called his town halls a message from Arne. So right away, that changes the tone. This is going to be us talking. So it allowed him to be authentic. He managed to be authentic because then he used a little humor, and he said something to the effect of, I debated whether to do this on video because of my new baldness, but we knew that that was an expected outcome of my treatment, my medical treatment. So people laughed at that a little bit. And he acknowledged how he felt, that he felt the pain of what was going on, but he also left with a message of hope and encouragement that they were going to get through this and move forward. So that doesn't change, but the medium does. So when you are speaking on video or on a platform, like any kind of platform, WebEx, Zoom, whatever, you just need to adjust the way that you're showing up, but the messaging is key. I would say the difference is the messaging has to be a little bit shorter and crisper when you're in media. Now, when I do media training, I show people how to speak in sound bites, and that is good training for any of these platforms as well, because what people are looking for are quotable quotes. So when I'm interviewed by the media, I might say something like, speaking is the new competitive advantage. Your power space is from your waist to your face. People can remember those quotable quotes. So that is a good tip in your messaging. So that's how it's the same. It's about energy. Now, let me go back to what you said earlier, because I agree. I feed off the energy of a live audience, and we miss that. So as to how you adapt, I can hear your voice. I can see you. So I try to feed off that a little bit. But the way you do it virtually is when you have a group, you can feed off their energy because they're going to be asking questions and they're going to be responding to the chat. So that's one way that you can do that. But fundamentals are the fundamentals, and you need to know what confidence looks like, what confidence sounds like, and how to speak the language of confidence. So let me give you an example. On a vocal, a common mistake is up talk. You're making a statement, but it sounds like you're asking a question. That's going to sound the same whether you're in a room or whether you're on a screen. That doesn't serve you very well because it makes you sound tentative. So the way you appear authoritative is similar, regardless of the medium. With some of the physical things, it's a little bit more challenging because most of the time we're seated, and it is harder to have energy when you're seated rather than standing. So the alternative is get a high desk and stand when you give your webcasts or when you're speaking virtually. So those are a few tips.
No, somebody told me that the other day, that they have a high desk and they do all of their podcasts and all of their video standing up. And I think that was smart. And I had another speaker say, I always have somebody in the room when I'm doing a virtual presentation so that I can speak to them, right?
Yes, that's good too. Yeah.
A question about leadership that you brought up, and I'm actually really curious about. How do you come across as empathetic and vulnerable, or if that's the right word. How do you come across like that on video? How do people, because that's also one of those sort of in-person things. You can see somebody's body language. You
Mhm.
can feel that in a person. Is that does that work? I mean, you were just talking about the Marriott CEO, and I think that that's what he accomplished in that. But
Mhm.
how do you do that? How do you, because I think right now this is a time for empathy as a leader,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And they're having to figure out how to do that and how to be empathetic and how to convey that via video. And I think that that's kind of hard.
It is hard, but the empathy can be shown with language, tone, and body language. So the body language is, first of all, your eyes. Do you look sincere? Do you like Arnie teared up?
Are people looking at that on video, you think?
What do you
Just
mean
as much as
looking
they
at?
do in person? I mean, are they looking at body language on camera as much as
Yes.
they do in person?
Well, I know I am. So when they had that, well, it wasn't Farm Aid, that was the good concert. What was the most recent one they did where the musicians
Oh,
went from
yeah,
name,
it was
One
last weekend.
World. Yeah,
One
the
World,
One
right?
World thing. All right. So I was looking forward to that. And then I see someone, was it Elish? I don't remember who it was, but she's sitting there in a t-shirt. She's leaning back like this on her sofa. And I'm thinking, really? You couldn't sit up? You couldn't put on something that doesn't look wrinkled. So yes, your body language does speak. And it is important to think about how you want to be conveyed. What am I trying to communicate? What is my brand? And then to get into that position, it is a little harder because you don't have as much movement. But part of empathy is tone. So I can speak like this, very clipped, and that doesn't sound very empathetic. Or
Right.
I can show warmth in my voice and slow my voice down a little bit and make use of the pause so that I'm waiting to hear back and I'm saying, I hear you, I want to hear from you. And then your messaging, the kind of words that you use can show empathy. So telling a story, I think, is one of the best ways to show empathy. When you
Mhm.
know what's of concern to the audience and you talk about that and you tell a story that they can relate to, you're showing empathy. When you
Okay.
refer to something that they've experienced, that's showing empathy.
So it's really just as important to pay attention to on camera as it is in person.
Yes.
When you're having a difficult conversation in person, you tend to think about it before you have it, right? And you kind of,
Mhm.
I almost have to get in the mood for those kind of conversations, right? And get in the right mindset. But it's the same on camera, I guess.
Yes, it is. I mean, you would not come to the camera and not prepare. And so it's the same thing. That's one of those fundamentals. Preparation is key, whether it's in a room or on a screen. And it, it is really important to have that feeling for the audience. Now, what's interesting? I was watching one of the ministers, Joel Osteen, who I think is a really good motivational speaker. And as COVID hit, my husband and I were watching him saying, something's a little off. Doesn't he seem like he's speaking just a little bit faster than normal? And I thought, you know what? He's speaking to an empty room and he was not feeding off of that energy. And I think that made a difference. Now, he's so seasoned as a speaker that I don't think anyone would have picked up on it if they didn't listen to him frequently, if they listened to him the first time. So there are things that are challenging when you're in a room, but I think when you know the fundamentals, they can translate very well. You just have to understand the medium that you're in.
So you've given us some tips for presenting sort of virtually. You've talked about sort of the basics or the fundamentals of a good presentation. Uh, any other thoughts on how um, we can do better virtual presentations before we wrap it up? Any thoughts you want to leave us with?
Yeah, no talking heads. You really need to get away from that thought of I'm a presenter, I'm a speaker. And here's what's interesting. The conference convention industry is dead. I saw an article, a chart, and the prediction was we wouldn't see keynotes or conferences until the fall of 2021. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but speakers I know, are now doing keynotes from their home. But it's more challenging. So it has to do with lighting and staging and makeup and limited movement and being able to show the whole body. So we have an opportunity here to challenge what we've already known. But most importantly, don't be a talking head. Take those moments, build in interaction when you can. Stop, ask for questions from the audience, then go back and speak in smaller sound bites.
One question I want to ask you is, and it just came up when you were talking about that, and that is for people out there who want to build their thought leadership and they want to build, it's hard, and it's hard to get into that speaking world. It's hard to break into that and understand how it works and how to get booked and all that stuff. Do you think the speaking business is sort of fundamentally changed, and does it open up an opportunity for others to really maybe even be able to get some bookings now in this different sort of world that we're in?
Yes, people are getting bookings. They're doing more webinars, they're doing more panels, they're doing more group coaching, and this is something that I've been doing. It's changing the way we show up. So for instance, when I joined National Speakers Association back, I don't know how many years ago, the model was the keynote speaker. And this is the person out once gig after time. Then the world changed after 9/11, and then they started adding training and whatever. And then if you did webinars, that counted. So yes, they've had to redefine and reinvent themselves to stay relevant because the world is now virtual, and I think that's the future. We'll still have conferences when virus is over, but I think it's going to be a hybrid. I think it's going to be a combo.
I agree. I don't think it's going to go back completely to normal because the revenue model is going to change. And I think the participation of those big, when people have been forced now to figure it out. And if I'm a company CEO, why would I send a group of people to a conference when we can get the same benefit if they go to it virtually, right?
You get the same information. I always say we will never, ever replace in person with virtual 100%, because why do you go to a conference? I know I go to a conference because I want to meet certain people, and I can't do that on a screen. Even if they're talking to me, I can't build a relationship that way. I want to be there and get them off to the side and get to know them. So you're right. I do think budget-wise, companies are going to say, why am I spending all this travel and expense? Let's do it virtually. But I think the ideal is hybrid, where you have maybe an hour, a couple of hours live, and then you do the rest online.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting what happens.
It'll be interesting how it shakes out. I think it's going to, but how can you book more if you're just starting out? How do you get more speaking gigs? How do you get more speaking opportunities?
By being visible, speak everywhere and anywhere, and speak for free when you start. Now, I know that that's counterintuitive because they'll say find a niche and know your target audience. But when you're starting to develop your skills, just get out there. And what happens is speaking is a good marketing tool, and I use it for marketing as well. And people see you, and it's like test driving a car. They see you, they like you, and then they'll say, oh, do you speak in companies? How much do you charge? Can you come in this month? So that's the first step. And then I would join National Speakers Association and Toastmasters. They're both different. Toastmasters helps you develop the skills of public speaking. National Speakers Association helps you develop the business of professional speaking. So that's for people who are in the business, but they do have guests come and you can learn there. And I'd say those are two very good organizations for getting more speaking gigs. It's very hard to get speaker agents and bureaus. They don't want to see you until you're making big money because they take commissions. So that's how I would do it. And then build your relationships. If you know someone who's spoken someplace at a conference, ask them, who's the contact there? Because they have to hire new people each year. And again, keep working on your skills. Here's one of my recommendations, knock out presentations. It'll tell you everything that you need to know. And then get yourself a coach or go to a seminar and really learn how to be good on the platform and on the screen. And that will make
How do you know how to charge for that?
charging.
How do you know when it's I've been doing this a long time too, but I'm curious, how do you coach people to know when they're ready to start charging or when they can charge for an event?
Well, here's one tip. When someone says, "What is your fee?" That's a good indicator that you can start charging. Here's one thing you can do. You can go to a speakers bureau online and start looking at the speakers and see what they charge and what their topics are. Now, starting out, you might not charge as much, but if you can get a ballpark, for instance, most speakers bureaus don't want to work with anyone who's less than 5,000 for a keynote, but there are some that do. And that's what you do. Or you give a fee, and then when they say that's too much, ask them what their budget is. And if it's important enough for you to work, take that fee and then build from there. But pricing is a whole different, you can do a whole show on that. It's a very hard thing to determine. It's supply and demand. It's how strong a brand do you have. So when you're starting out, I say do what you can to be visible, to work on your skills, and to get paid. Ask on a program.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. And working on it's just not that either, right? It is building that thought leadership, that presence online and on social media, because they look at that, right? If you don't have a presence, if you don't have a presence online,
it is. I know that I've been told that before somebody ever calls you to speak, they've already looked at all of your profiles. They've gone to Google, they've gone to YouTube. They already know what you do and who you are. So I would say get out there, really build your profile and your thought leadership on all the platforms. Get quoted in the press if you can. Do as many podcasts as you can, or do a podcast. I chose not to do that, but many people have their own podcasts, and that's a good way to get known as well.
Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, I want to invite everyone to my website, DiResta.com. It's D as in David, IRESTA.com. I have a free audio course there, 7 Mistakes Speakers Make. I invite you to do that. And I want to wish everybody success in this new medium.
Thank you. And maybe we'll have you back on and talk about it when things sort of come back to normal. And let's see where things are and see how it's changing the speaker business and how it's changing, online video conferences and stuff. I think it'd be great to do a follow-up to see what changes you're seeing and are there any new skills that we need to adapt. So thank you so much, Diane. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rhett.
And thank you for spending some time with us today on the Power Lunch. I wanted to say hi to Karen. She tuned in, and Allie. Thanks for tuning in, and you guys are great. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow back on the show. And until then, enjoy whoever you're spending time with right now. Stay safe. And you can look at this. You can find the schedule for the show at powerlunch.live online. And you can see our whole upcoming schedule. Pretty much all of May is taken up. We've got great guests coming up. So until tomorrow, we'll see you then. Have a great day.